I will show you two really interesting variations you should consider playing if you're playing the Italian game and you get this setup, which is also known as the Giuoco Pianissimo. And this is when black plays the bishop to c5 and also the knight to f6. So this video is part of my series on the Italian game. So the Italian game is e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then we play c4, the Italian game. If black plays bishop c5 immediately, you can always go for d3, knight f6, and then you will also have this position. But against bishop c5 I have some other interesting lines, so we are going to transpose into this position after we play these moves, knight f6 from black, and then we're going to play d3 with white. And most people with the black pieces will play bishop to c5. There are some other options which I will take a look at in different videos, but bishop to c5. So this is our main starting position, and I will show you two really interesting ways of playing here. So many players here immediately castle. We are not going to do that. We are going to play bishop to e3. And here there are two different approaches and two different types of games we can get. So the most played line, which you will get the most, is black will capture your bishop, which is what we want. That is the most tactical and attacking variation for us. And then the second most played move is what to do if black plays the bishop back to b6. That is a really strategic game where we are going to go into a winning endgame position for white. So first we're going to take a look at what to do if black captures. We're going to capture back with the pawn, and the main idea here is that we wanted to open up this f-file. And this game is a really beautiful lesson in how to use open files with your rooks and how to fight against a pawn weakness. And we're going to try to fight against this f7 pawn here. So usually black will castle, white will castle. Of course black can also play a move like d6 first, but this will most likely transpose. At some point they will castle, and you will see that we do have pressure here against this f7 pawn, and here d6 from black. But as I said, the order can also be reversed. And many of these lines I recommend playing in early a3, because basically you don't want to have to trade your bishop. Your bishop is a really good attacking piece, and you don't want to trade here. Of course here black will not play this because we can always capture here, and that also defends the bishop and wins a pawn. But after a move like d6, if you are not careful, black could try to capture your bishop. So that's why we play e3, and of course if black attacks us, we can go all the way back and we can still keep an eye on this f7 square with the knight, with the bishop. Okay, so a move you will see a lot from black is bishop g4. We also allowed this. We didn't play h3 on purpose because we wanted to allow black to play this, since it doesn't really matter. And then we are going to play h3 here. And the reason why is this bishop can actually be a key defender, and some variations. If black plays a move like bishop e6, well, it's already a little bit harder to fight against this weakness. I would recommend not capturing, because you are just creating a really identical position, and that's not what we want. If black plays bishop e6, we want to play knight to d2, and in many lines you will get takes with the knight, and then still you can see we have an imbalance here, meaning our position is different from our opponent's position, and that's really important because it's mainly in those lines that you will be able to fight for an advantage. And here we have an extra pawn in the center, and we also have this file to work with. But I think you won't get this a lot. Most of the time, since we are allowing this, you will probably get a move like bishop g4. And after they play this, we're going to play this move h3, and we are inviting black to capture our knight. If black captures our knight, we are going to recapture with the queen, and this just helps because now we have two pieces fighting against this f7 pawn, and also the light squared bishop from black is gone. Of course, black doesn't have to capture. They can always decide to go back, which I don't think you will see a lot, or they can decide to play bishop to h5, which is the most played line, but this is a pretty bad line for black, because if they play this, you can immediately strike here with pawn to g4, and then they will have to move the bishop back to g6, and then we can play the knight here, and our goal is just going to be to trade off this bishop. And then this bishop is gone, this key defender. At the same time, we also still have this open file for the rook. We still have the pressure here. And many lines will have queen f3 as well. We'll activate the knight and put it here on d5. So this is a worse variation for black. So black will usually capture. We can recapture, and as I said, really keep an eye on this f7 pawn. That is going to be the entire plan for white here. I'm just gonna take a look at the black position, and then if you take a look at this, you will see that, well, black cannot push in the center. Black will probably not start pushing on the king side. That would just be devastating since we already have so much pressure. So the only real plan for black is to try and go for some kind of a queen side attack. And we're gonna let them do this. If they want to, they can always do this. We already created this square for the bishop, so we are fine here. And again, looking at this from the black side, it's hard. You can always try to continue the attack, but still this pawn and this knight is also stopping some potential moves from black. A move like queen d7 you will often get in these variations, maybe here, maybe a little bit earlier. All of that is possible. And then here again, we want to put more pressure on this f7 pawn. And there's no immediate way of doing this, but we still have this rook on a1 that is not participating in the game. So I would recommend to play rook f2, and we are just going to double up on the open file, which is a really principal approach. We have an open file, so we're going to double up and try to put as much pressure as we can here on this pawn. Again, black has to do something. I'm not saying these are all the optimal moves from black. They can always push a rook, but nothing really matters. I'm going to say they play knight e7, which is a top engine move, also because then they can play the c5, and also the knight can sometimes be a defender here on g6. So we're going to double up. c6 is a move from black. Again, other moves are possible. c5 is possible as well. c6 is good because it stops us from jumping in with the knight, which is sometimes we would otherwise do. If you get something like c5, you can actually start attacking here immediately on the king side. For example, pawn to g4, and let's say they play h6 because they want to stop you. Well, the funny thing is you can actually still push this, and after they capture, you can now fight against this weakness here on g5, and it's almost impossible to defend this from the black side. We are going to be able to activate all of our pieces here, and there is basically a checkmate in every single line. It's hard to even find a move from black. I'm just going to play something. We can take here again. Black has to do something. For example, knight here. We can put the queen on h5. If they ever try to play a move like g6, well, we now have a sacrifice here with the rook, so that also doesn't work. If they just bounce around with the knight in many lines, you can actually sacrifice, and then you could play something like knight d5, or you could even try to swing over this rook, and this is all really devastating for black. So this g4 idea is something you can sometimes play depending on what black does. If black is a little bit safe, for example with a move like c6, we can still play this move g4, but here we cannot jump in with the knight, so that is a small difference here. For example h6, and then again multiple options. You can just push g5, but you can also always put your rook here on the g file and support this push, because as white we have a lot of time in these kinds of positions. We don't have to rush anything. We can just go for the build up and keep building up the attack, and that's an important thing in these positions. Don't be too aggressive, and don't try to immediately go all in and exchange pieces, because your attack will slow down. It is best to keep activating pieces, putting them in better positions, and do a more slow build up, since black just doesn't have any good moves. Here with black, I'm playing the move d5. Again, you can play different moves, but it's all pretty hard to defend. Capture, capture, and then a g5 here, for example. You could have also played g5 earlier. Pawn takes, rook takes. For example, knight h7, we can just go back. And these are similar positions to what we have seen before. White just has a devastating attack here, and black is already losing in every single line. Maybe you move like g6 trying to defend, but you also have to keep in mind that there are many sacrifices in these kinds of positions. Here we can take with the queen on e5, for example f6, queen can go back, king here, h4, and black does survive in some of these lines. For example, here black is not immediately losing yet, even though we are already at move 24. But you can see black is really on the defensive here, and I won't show you all of these variations. You will just have to play these and figure out yourself what to do, and it's important that you are actually good at attacking and tactical play if you want to play this variation. So definitely work on that as well, because here there are so many tricks for white with pushing h5, sometimes with rook sacrifices. Sometimes you will be able to capture here or play e4 as well. And many of these lines you will actually play e4 because we want to open up this. And white is just winning in every single variation with beautiful checkmates. Then the next thing I wanted to take a look at is if we get this exact same position, of course if white captures we already know we are going to go for this F-file battle. Black can also drop back. So black can also choose to play bishop to b6, which is the second most played move. There's pretty much not anything else. I'm going to show you some small variations for black as well in the end, but bishop b6 is like the only real alternative move. And here I will show you something really beautiful that you can go for, but you have to decide for yourself if this is something you want to play or not, but I would recommend playing this. So we're going to play bishop takes. So we are going to take, and our goal is to damage the black pawn structure as much as we can. So here we already gave black the doubled pawns. Then we're going to play knight c3. Again, you can also castle here, that's fine, but I would say develop the knight first. And black can either castle or play d6, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you d6 first. And if they play d6, in many of these lines they want to play bishop g4. So we are going to play h3 first. Of course, if they castle, you can also play h3, and you will just get a transposition to this. So h3, and then here black will most likely castle or play bishop e6. If they castle, we are just going to castle, and then again the most played move by black is bishop e6 in these lines. But I'm going to look at bishop e6 first, and here we are going to do something quite crazy. We are going to trade again. And if you take a look at this, you can see the black pawn structure is actually not so good. Black has two doubled pawns, and there are also two open files. And you will also see why we did not castle any earlier. This was a little trick that we played in this position. Here, black is most likely going to want to castle on the next move, and we're going to play knight to g5. And our plan here with knight to g5 is to attack this weakness, because now this is a weak pawn in the black camp. Of course, black can protect this with something like queen e7 or queen d7. Both are pretty similar. And then we are going to jump forward with this knight as well, knight to b5. And this variation is very beautiful because this is actually kind of forced. Because you can always take here yourself, and many black players will play the bishop to e6 and allow you to capture there. And if you do, you will be able to damage their pawn structure. So this variation that you see here is the most played variation that you will get. And then at some point here, black is going to castle, and then we have a beautiful trick here. We can play knight takes e6, and we are sacrificing the knight for a pawn. And if black captures this, we can play knight takes c7 with a fork on the queen and the rook. The queen can move, and then we play knight takes rook and rook takes knight. And if you take a look at this position, you will see that we basically gave black two knights in exchange for our rook. So black has two knights in exchange for a rook. And we are also up a pawn. And this is a really interesting position because, as I said, this is really forced, and you will get into an early endgame with this. And the endgame is better for white. Here you can castle, and castling is also a small trap, quote unquote trap, because black will probably just capture this for free, which is of course a decent move by black. Now black has equalized on the pawn, but that is what we wanted, because now we can trade, we can activate the queen. And again, black doesn't have to trade here, but I think most people with the black pieces will trade. And then you can get an endgame like this. And even if you get something that is familiar to this, the entire goal with this variation of the opening is just to go for an early endgame and have this rook versus two knights situation. With or without queens, or with or without a second pair of rooks, it doesn't really matter. We want to go into this endgame and exchange as much as possible. And this is a really interesting position, especially if you're also someone that is wanting to work on their endgame skills. I would definitely recommend playing this, because now you will have to navigate how to play rook versus two knights. But here we have the big advantage that this black pawn structure is just terrible, and at the same time this white pawn structure is really beautiful and solid. And if you want to win this endgame, of course there are a trillion different variations that you can have. But if you want to win this, there are a couple of important things to keep in mind as white. The main thing is we want to keep our pawns very solid, so we don't want to just randomly push pawns and create weaknesses. Also, we want to play this move f3 and then get our king here to the center, because the winning plan for white will consist of creating a passed pawn here in the center, which we can do because we have a 3 versus 2 situation, so we can create a passed pawn here. For example, black can play something like a knight d4, which is always possible, but in many of these lines you want to play c3 anyways. That is a pawn push you can do and create this kind of structure, which is really solid, and it's going to be hard for black to fight this. Rook check, for example, always good activating the rook on this open file. And even if there is no check, even if they move the king earlier, let's say they move the king here, you can actually still activate your rook here. So many of these lines will transpose. So let's say this variation, and then we're going to play f3, and this is the pawn structure you have to keep in mind. And once we have this, we are going to leave the pawns like this for a while, and we are first going to activate the king. So we're going to come up, black can push here. They don't have to push, of course, but if you think about this from the black side, black will want to do something. Black has to do something. So this is probably not something they want to push, because if they start pushing this, it's all going to fall because this rook will be too strong. This push seems logical, and pushing on the king side is actually really bad for black as well. So they can push, we don't have to capture, we can just go in with the king, because of course if they capture us, we can take with the pawn, and you will see that we can create a passed pawn here. So if they take, we take. If they don't capture us, they are also in trouble. But again, if you look at it, it's really hard to find any moves from black. Let's just say they make a random move. You will be able to push d4. And then, for example, this variation. I'm just going to show you this, and you can see we have the passed pawns, and white is winning in these lines. So let's say they take immediately, we play this, and then black will have to do something, and black will try to push somewhere or create some type of threat. And we are always going to go for this passed pawn. So for example, d4, and black can take this, but taking it is just terrible for black. I think many people will take this, but this is just terrible, because now you have 2 pawns, you can keep marching them up the board, and also your rook will be able to attack this, your rook will be able to attack this, here as well, and white is just winning in every single line. If black is a little bit more careful and they don't capture, for example, they move the king, but again, it's really hard, almost every move is losing for black. You can even play this move b4 here. And basically we are trying to bait black into this variation, and if they capture this pawn for free, of course, here we have this check. So after this, black will have to move the king somewhere, and then you can just play b5. The knight has to move, for example, knight back, rook can attack this pawn, and here again you have 2 extra pawns. Also in this variation, if black pushes b5, for example, you can push here with the pawn, and then you can start activating the rook. And here white is also winning, for example, in this variation, attacking the knight, attacking this, picking up the pawn, and white is winning. So I think this is a really interesting line to go for if you want to practice your endgame and also get a winning endgame position as white. And here in this position, this is the last thing I want to take a look at. So if they capture you, we have this f-file attack. If they go back, we can go for this endgame with all of these trades. What else can they do? Well, not much. I think d6 is like the only line you will sometimes see. And here we are just going to capture this, because this is not so good for black. And you can even play bishop here, pinning this knight. And white is already winning. It's interesting to analyze these lines. I will put these in the Leech study as well. For example, here you can capture, and then win this pawn. So the d6 line really is not so good for black. Maybe if they realize that this is under attack, they can try to defend it, but then we can give them tripled pawns. And this is going to be strategically so bad that the black will always be losing. And again, nothing else is really possible here. Maybe they can give you a check, but then you can always play c3, and this is also not so good. The bishop has to go back, probably here to a5. And then again, in many of these lines, we are going to put pressure here and try to win this pawn, and sometimes even go for a full queenside expansion. So this bishop b4 is also not so good. Maybe queen e7 is something that can be tried, but again, you can just play a normal situation, and in many of these lines they will actually capture here and still allow you to go for this, or they will still drop back, and if they drop back, you can always still go for that line with captures as we have seen before. So nothing that black does can really stop you. You just have to know the 2 main plans for what to do if they capture and what to do if they drop back. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this, definitely subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. I try to read all comments, and that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.